Project 3B. This is continuing exercises with strokes and brushes. We're going to add some more interesting and more complicated effects. Again, you want to start with a very simple drawing. This is the cherry demo that you see on instruction PDF that's provided. You can see this is a very simple line drawing. You may also notice I've got half-inch guides so that I maintain a consistent margin. I'd like you to use a different photo or a different object. And you can see this is a demo I've done in previous years. This is the end result. When you're doing this, you probably want to get as close to the object as you can, even though you're not doing a detailed drawing. Take my magnifying glass, come in close on this. It's just easier to draw, especially with a mouse at a larger size. And you can see that I started drawing on this one. There's a downstroke for the back of the saxophone. There's the mouthpiece. Change this to a more noticeable color since it's too similar to the saxophone color. When I drew this, I didn't like some of it. Sometimes lines come out lumpy. Let me draw you some lumpy lines. And I'm drawing with the paintbrush using charcoal feather. And I think I'll start here, down around here. On the inside, sort of, yeah, it's close enough. And then the bell opening, and that's really lumpy. So what I can do, I'm going to go into wireframe mode so you can see the actual paths. I have here something that looks like what in conventional art is called a stump. It's a little rolled up piece of paper you can use for smoothing and spreading charcoal or chalk, pastels. But here, what it does is smooth out your lumpy curves. Wipe that a few times. Maybe this one I'll grab that anchor point and actually lock it to that one. I can right click and join those for a single point, and that's not a smooth intersection. So I can take my smooth tool and smooth that. So we get a nicer shape out of that. That's pretty good. Command Y. And then I need a few valves. You don't need a lot of valves because we're not doing a precise drawing. No one is going to learn to play the saxophone by looking at my drawing. I'm going to use an ellipse. And then maybe I'll drag it down here, hold the Alt key, and let go. And then Command D, I'll have one more. Notice that my saxophone photo is locked. When I drag over stuff, I don't accidentally grab the picture. So lock that, and I drag over this. I only want those three things. I don't want this, so I can hold the Shift key and click on that. So I only get these three objects. And then Command C, copy, Command V, paste, and we move those down here. Although I think that might be too many valves. I was drawing with the brush tool, but I didn't draw these. I used a shape tool for that. So I will just apply that brush to those shapes. Let's see, how do I like that? You can also reverse the direction of a path. For instance, I think this one might be better if it was going the other way, but rather than redraw that, I can go into Object, Path, Reverse Path Direction, and then it goes from heavy down here to thin up there. Move that over a little bit this way. Just move these points in this way. And if I want, I can use my smooth tool and smooth that path out. That's as good as the saxophone needs to be. My image is linked, indicated by this X. It's not pixels embedded in the file, making my file unnecessarily larger. Lock that. I'm going to turn it off. Here's my saxophone drawing. I'm worried about this saxophone fitting, so I'm going to cartoon it up a little more perhaps. I'm going to select all these anchor points and scoot it down a little. Oh. Seem to be in snap. Yes, I'm going to turn off that snap because that makes it jump and I can't draw smoothly. And take my smoother and just kind of smooth that out some more. And G, make sure this is grouped. What if I make it a little wider? And I'm going to slant it a little more. Make sure I can get enough of them on the page. and then scale it down some. Because it's kind of long and narrow, I'm only going to do 3 rows, but it'll be 4 in each row because this is a tall, narrow object. Hold the Shift key to constrain, drag this over a little, hold the Alt key, let go of both and the mouse, and then Command D to duplicate the last thing that I did. Command D again. I'll move these over so they're centered, and my Smart Guide tells me when that's centered. Up a little bit more. Hold the Shift key while dragging, hold the Alt key, and then release everything to duplicate. Command D, duplicate that. And I could go down a little more here. See if this will tell me where that's in the center. About there. Okay, so there's my 12 objects. And again, you want to try different strokes, but on this one, rather than a brush that replicates a physical brush, we're going to use scatter brushes. And actually for this, I'm going to move over to this one that I did in a previous semester, which has scatter brushes on it. And that's what I want to see is scatter brushes and pattern brushes. And you can use existing patterns. See, brushes. The existing patterns, and these are ones that I've previously added. For instance, there's that sort of blue jean one. You can reduce the size of it if it's too big for your object. This was made from the flower that is in the symbol palette. This is a symbol that I found in the symbol collections. What you want to do here is find symbols in the symbol libraries, 3D symbols. 3D symbols may or may not work. Probably they won't. If I add this one and drag it in here, what you do to make a scatter brush or a pattern brush, you take the symbol that you've dragged from the symbol library or your symbol palette. It actually adds to the symbol palette automatically. If I drag it onto my artboard, it will add that to the symbol palette. I'm going to go to the brush palette and drag this onto the brush palette. And if it's allowed, it will work. If it's not allowed, it will tell me. If I want this to be a scatter brush, this one works. And what I want to see in a scatter brush is I don't want to see everything the same size and in the same place, because then it's not really scattering. It's just a pattern brush. Scatter, random, spacing random, scatter, random, rotation, random. I'm going to say OK for now. I'm going to apply that to this one. And you can see that's kind of large. So I'm going to double click on the scatter brush in my brush palette. Let's reduce the minimum size. A lot smaller. That was a very big arrow. And then the spacing needs to be more in proportion to the object. So let's say this is the spacing. And then they're all going the same way, which isn't that exciting either. You'll notice you can do these based on stylus wheel or pressure when you're drawing with the brush, only if you have a stylus. If you don't have a stylus, then you're limited to fixed or random, possibly tilt bearing or rotation. So scatter, random, don't go wild with this. If you use really big numbers, you may scatter all over the page and then you can't really tell what that scatter is applied to. I would do like minus 10 or 15% and maybe plus 15% so that they stay somewhere near the actual object. Random rotation, maybe 90 degrees, minus 90 degrees minimum and plus 90 degrees maximum. And we'll see how that looks. It looks pretty weird, but that's a scatter brush. Some things are not allowed. I found this sushi in, there's a food library. Let's see, celebration, no. So a lot of these things will work, some of them will not. And it depends on what sort of elements are included in the symbol. There was sushi, and there's a sushi category. So I drag that sushi onto my desktop. Let's try a different sushi. Here's the sushi. And then that's automatically added to my symbol palette. If I go to my brush palette and try to drag that in and say I want this to be a scatter brush, this one contains an element that cannot be used in a scatter brush. And likewise, this one let's say art brush. This selected artwork contains an element that cannot be used in an art brush or a scatter brush or anything else. So some of them won't work. I have an example here. Let's say I was going to make a bunch of grapes and make a symbol out of it. These are just ellipses, and I made the ellipses a purple gradient. I drag it in here, scatter brush. No, I can't do it. And the reason is because of the gradient. So if I change this to a solid grape color, maybe with a black stroke so I can see them a little better, and then drag that to the brush palette and make a scatter brush, that's allowed. So the gradient doesn't allow a scatter brush to be made. I like to see scatter brushes that are actually random and do something interesting. And I'll make these fairly small because I can always make it larger by changing the stroke size. 10 and 25. I use my tab key to jump from window to window in a dialog box. Spacing random, maybe 12 to 30. Scatter minus 10% to plus 10%. Rotation, maybe minus 90 to 90. And color method, I could make this tints and shades. And what happens when you do that is when you change the brush color, apply this to something, maybe I'll put it on this one. Actually, let me grab all of those and apply it to the whole object. When you change the stroke color, it changes the object color that is used in the scatter brush. And if it's not tints and shades, let's see what else we can do here. I'll reopen this. And let's do just tints, see if that makes a difference. I don't see a difference. Hue shift, that doesn't make a lot of difference. You may notice that more with one of the other types of brushes. The one thing you will notice is that every time I click on this, I get a different random arrangement. It randomizes every time you click to apply that. So that's scatter brushes. This looks like it may have been a pattern brush. It's made out of palm tree.